You are watching the Draft Academy, and there's lots we're going to try and cover today. We've got a new manager at Everton. We've got no manager at Leeds, although that seems to be getting some resolution. But on top of all of that, we've got all the drama going on with Man City and the big question of what to do with Liverpool assets. Joining me tonight is Jared Angel. And Angel, give me your thoughts on this whole Man City situation.
Yeah, interesting. Firstly, I think City are getting what's coming to them. You know, everyone, it's been so obvious for years, but it's just kind of been accepted, you know, and I think now what do you say, the chickens are coming home to roost.
Yeah.
So, my thoughts on it are City going to get the punishment that we all want them to? Definitely not. I think they're going to get a large monetary fine, which doesn't mean much to them, and you know, maybe they get a point stock, maybe they get a transfer ban, but anything out of that, I'd be quite surprised. I think they're going to get away with this.
I disagree with you. I don't think it's possible that with over 100 charges against them, it's possible that they come away with just a fine. I think there'll be transfer bans. I think there'll be points deductions. I think they'll get a harsh punishment, but they'll be allowed to stay in the league, and that's going to be the compromise that's going to be reached. But more importantly, more importantly is what happens with Pep, what happens with future signings. You know, knowing that in the next year or two, you could be playing for a team that's in a bit of trouble. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's the story starting today that you can see all over the place saying there's panels saying this is going to take between 2 and 4 years to be resolved. You know,
yeah.
So, and while that's happening, City can just carry on doing what they want technically. You know, so by that time, Pep would have probably moved on. Your superstar players at Man City would have moved on. You know, so it's going to kind of be the next generation of City's problem, if we want to call it that.
Yeah, no, for sure. But from a draft perspective, it does have a big impact, right? City are really somewhat unsettled, still playing really well, still second in the log, but they're not playing the football they were playing last season, still trying to figure out the best way to use Haaland. It has affected a lot of draft players. We've obviously seen Cancelo leave. Foden hasn't seen the pitch in a while. You know, we're used to a lot of rotation happening in that team, but it seems like they've settled on a starting 11 that they want to try get to work. So, bit difficult to figure out what to do with City assets at the moment.
Yeah, look, it's tricky. You know, in the past there were 4 or 5 City assets that you always knew, if I have these guys, they're going to play most games this season, and I'm going to get my points out of it. You know,
and that's just talking about the upfront players.
Correct. So, I mean, right now there's probably 2. You know, that you can guarantee are pretty much starting every game, and that's Edison and Haaland.
I would throw Ake in there. He's playing really well at the moment, and Pep seems to be leaning on him the same way he leant on Cancelo. So I think Ake is a really nice hold at the moment. I think with Cancelo leaving, Rico Lewis is going to get a lot of game time as well. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm a Jack Grealish holder, right? And even though City lost against Spurs, I thought he looked really good. I thought he looked a lot more like he did at Villa, getting a lot of fouls, setting up a lot of set pieces, still getting a lot of touches in the box. And interestingly, I've looked at trying to see what I can get for him in terms of a trade. And I just don't feel that there's any trade that anyone would accept for him at the moment. And what that means to me is you could probably pick up Grealish pretty cheaply at the moment. And I think he could be a good pickup going forward. Mahrez, not too bad. Alvarez, like, would you be gunning for any of those oaks? Would you be trying to trade KDB?
Look, I'm a Foden holder, so I'm in a very similar boat to that. My plans for Foden is something I want to talk about a bit later in the show, but to answer your question, yeah, I think all those players are gettable right now. You know, KDB may be a little bit more difficult, but the others you mentioned, you could probably push on and get. Mahrez, maybe a few weeks ago would have been easier than now, you know, coming to form. But again, Champions League starting again next week, and Pep likes to have his Champions League and his Premier League team. So before making any rash Man City moves, I would wait to see how that pans out.
Yeah, no, definitely agree with that. From my side, I think that, I would be holding Mahrez, Grealish, De Bruyne, and Haaland. Outside of that, I would be looking to see what I could trade for. Just out of, just to see if there were any upgrades I could make to my team. I wouldn't be holding on to any of those other players, too hard. You hold Foden. What is the plan with him?
So look, Foden's a bit difficult to tell right now what's the plan, but I would be looking at an opposite side. If I didn't have Foden, I would maybe be looking, could I get Foden? And the reason I say that is, let's remove the last 3-4 games that he didn't appear in, and that's because of injury. So prior to that, 16 games into the season, he played in 11 of those games, got 11 returns. Okay. And I personally think Grealish is going to be shifted into the Champions League team, which gives Foden that opportunity to be playing Premier League football, which obviously is where we'd be looking at him from a draft perspective. And I think he could be pretty easy to get. I'm not saying you can go and trade him out for a De Silva of the sorts, but it's a player slightly above that, could land you Haaland, and at any given point he could spin, and become the player he was at the beginning of the season, playing some of the best football in the Premier League. And
I think you're crazy saying he could land you Haaland.
Sorry. I was meant to say Foden.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were saying Foden could probably land you who? Like, who do you think you could get for him?
No, I'm not saying you should trade Foden. I'm saying you should trade for Foden.
I know, but you hold him. Give us an idea of what someone who's holding Foden would be willing to accept. Like, would you take a Jared Bowen, get those guaranteed minutes every single week for a player is quality, could always turn a season around? Would you take Maddison at the moment? Like, how hard would someone have to come in to get him off your hands?
It's just difficult for me to ask it because I'm taking a view that most probably wouldn't. And I feel like maybe only Foden holders could take my view out now because we have seen what he can do. But if you just go and look at his stats, you see, this guy's not playing anymore. I need a starter. That's what allows the person who's coming into you to be like, okay, here's Casemiro for Foden.
Nah, Casemiro, you're drunk, bro. No ways. No one's doing that deal.
I'm saying there's an opportunity to try it. Just try. And someone who's got a tough midfield who needs a starter may have to really think about something like that. I think he could spin and you can get him on the cheap. Well, yeah, look, what would you take for Grealish?
What would I take for Grealish?
Who, by the way, Foden still has more points than Grealish, than Mahrez, than Bernardo Silva. And these are guys playing week in, week out.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, it's hard to say he's going to play in the Champions League. You can't just take the view that he's going to play in the Champions League and think that that's...
I think Grealish is going to play in the Champions League.
But no, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. You can't just assume he's going to be a Champions League player and lose minutes in the Premier League. That's just something you're assuming, What would I accept for Grealish?
Well, we're assuming based off history. This is historically what Pep does. Once the tournament comes back round, you're his Champions League player or you're his Premier League player. Not many of the players get to be both.
No, I get that. But I don't think we quite know where either of those players fall at the moment. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Sure.
Look, Grealish, I'd be very open to a number of players,
Would you take Casemiro?
I was going to say Mitrovic, but I wouldn't get a Mitrovic. No, never. I'd never take Casemiro for Grealish.
I can guarantee you wouldn't get Mitrovic.
No.
As a Mitrovic holder, there's maybe 3 or 4 players I would let go for him. So, no, you wouldn't get a
100%.
a Mitrovic.
Yeah, look, but there are a lot of assets to pick up at the moment in Everton. I brought this up a couple of weeks ago, and I said, given the right manager, there could be lots of freebies there. Mentioned James Tarkowski. Went and picked him up after we got the first taste of Burnley 2.0 up in Merseyside. So any players you're looking to pick up there?
So my honest view on that is absolutely none. I think we've seen it tons of times where the new manager comes in, everyone's ready to go. It just so happened to be Arsenal this week, which made it look that much better than it probably was. I still think Everton can get relegated, so I would wait 2 or 3 weeks. I'm going to imagine a lot of their players are still going to be lying around for now. Wait, see how it plays out. We don't even know who Sean Dyche wants to have in his team. We're just going to assume, you're going to go look at the stats and be like, oh, if Webby's got the most goals, he's going to play. We know what Sean Dyche can do and what he does bring to the league, but I think it's too early to dive at Everton assets.
No,
maybe
mad,
if Calvert-Lewin's lying around, sure.
No, you're crazy, and I'll tell you why you're crazy, bro. Like, first of all, you can't wait 2 weeks in draft, right? If Everton pull off another result against a very poor Liverpool at the moment, right, all of a sudden those guys are gone. There's no 2 or 3 weeks, right? So,
but what happens if they don't pull off the result?
If they don't pull off the result, there's still a really nice run of fixtures coming up,
and the next game comes and they don't pull off the result. You've dropped a potential better player than what you've got on too much risk for now.
No, but this is what I'm saying over here, bro. I go having a quick glance at your team, and you've got an oak like Sergio Gomez and Ferguson sitting in your team at the moment. There's nothing wrong with dropping, oaks like that for a week or two for other oaks to see what happens. Okay, Ferguson, he's probably a player you want to hold on to. Players like Langley, players like Sergio Romero, these are oaks that aren't going to get snatched up in the transfer window if you drop them. They're just not. So everyone's always got those spaces floating around in their team of oaks that they, they know are expendable. So why be so cautious and wait to see when they fire?
Look, I still believe I've got better players than what Everton are going to bring me. Yes, you mentioned Sergio Gomez, but Cancelo's gone. Stones is out for a month. Those 4 defenders that City have are not going to play every single game with the Champions League coming up. And someone like Ake will get rested playing the Champions League, where Gomez and City have fantastic fixtures as well. Could potentially get me 2 or 3 games in there until Stones is back. And I would rather have a risk on him than taking a risk on an Everton defender.
Yeah, I think time's going to prove you wrong. I think Everton have a better squad than... they've got a good squad. I wouldn't even say a better squad than most people think. I think most people would agree they've got a good squad. Connor Cody and Tarkowski, are potentially an excellent centre-back pairing. Calvert-Lewin's a fantastic player. They've got Neil Mope there, who's got a couple of goals in him. They do have Iwobi. They do have Gray. It's a good team. It's a very solid team. That new mid of theirs that they bought in January, I think, has been very impressive. And it's a shit show of a club. That's there's no doubt about that it's run like an absolute, they will get relegated at some point if they continue to run the club like this. But Dyche just has to manage them all over 19 games. And they've got a beautiful run of fixtures coming up after Liverpool. And I think if you're holding any players that aren't, if you're holding Aston Villa defenders, if you're holding anything along those lines, rather take the punt now than wait and have to pick up scraps.
Sure. I think time will tell here. My view, too early to dive at the assets.
I'll be laughing at you in a couple of weeks when Tarkowski's ripping it up and I'm trading you Tarkowski for Foden. Another team that's got a lot of nice potential assets with no managers, Leeds. Right, Leeds also have a really nice team. Mainly like up front in their attacking options. I've never backed the Leeds defense, unless you're picking up like an Ailing who's got potential for a return or two. But you look at the likes of Aronson, Jack Harrison. I know Rodrigo's out for quite a while, but he's been having a really good season. Bamford, a lot of options in that Leeds team. Going to be interesting to see who they get. It's looking like it's going to be a manager from South America. I know they were after. I can't remember the team, but it was a League One team, but they're a West Brom manager, but they signed him to a 2-year extension to make sure that he didn't move over to Leeds. So a lot of options there. Anyone you're trying to pick up from Leeds at the moment?
The complete opposite. I've got rid of them all. Again, I am not a fan of new managers coming in and diving on teams just like Everton. I did hold 3 Leeds players just for this double game week. I held Ailing, he's gone. I held Aronson, he's gone. I've kept one. I hope I'm saying his name right, in Gnonto. So him I'll hold. I think there's a bright future there. Very nice and exciting young player. But outside of that, I wouldn't hold more. I had Rodrigo as well. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, he's got the big injury. That was a major blow to my team. But yeah, we replaced him out. And yeah, so from a Leeds perspective, as you mentioned, some nice players there, but I wouldn't be trying to have more than one of them at a time.
Yeah, look, again, depends who you're holding in your team. I would wait to see who the manager is. Like with Sean Dyche, we know he can do the job, so I think it's a bit different there. But and I think most of those Oaks, with the exception of like your Aronsons and maybe one or two other players, I would assume most other Leeds players are already being held simply because of the double game week. But I know you had one or two other potential trade options that you were looking at.
Yeah, another one that I would look at, and I've put forth an offer myself, which was rejected, which shows that I'm right and the guy who rejected it is right. So that player is Mo Salah, and I think the facts are going to speak for themselves quite easily. As poor as he's been, still the 6th top scoring midfield in the league. And when we look at that as 6, he's got 3 points behind KDB, who's supposedly the best Premier League player. 6 points
the best
behind,
Premier League player.
is the best Premier League player. 6 points behind Saka, who's having the season of his life. And 15 points behind Marcus Rashford, who is supposedly the Ballon d'Or winner of the season as well. So
I don't know what crazy people you talk to, bro.
And then again, another one with some of those tinted glasses coming from your fan base. Salah still is 8 points clear of Bruno Fernandes. So now here's where my thinking comes in, right? A Salah holder is maybe starting to feel a little bit frustrated. If he's done his research, he'll know that Van Dijk, Jota and Bobby Firmino, as well as Arthur Melo, are all back in training this week, which are some real senior players and leaders that can maybe give Liverpool that lift that they need to get out of this bust. Jota being on the field opens up space for Salah, so he can start playing a better game. Right now, if you consistently watch Liverpool, you can see for any opposing manager how easy it is to take him out the game. You put 2 or 3 players on Salah right now because the others aren't doing anything. And he can only go backwards again. So when Jota's back on the field...
Yes, go for it, bro.
Sorry?
No, go for it.
When you have guys like Bobby Firmino and Jota back on the field, you're now in a situation as an opposing team, we can't just let those guys run free like we have with Darwin or with Cody. So I think that changes things a little bit from a Mo Salah perspective. And it's why, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's going to be easier than it's ever been before to try and get him.
But you have to tell us what your offer was. We need to know. You can't just... you have to give us some perspective here.
My offer was look at my team and choose what you want. Let's try and make a deal. And it was just no.
Oh, interesting. Okay, interesting.
I'm not letting him go.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's fair enough. I mean, I do have to ask you the question again, just to see how biased you are at the moment. I asked you a couple of weeks ago if you were a Salah holder, would you take Rashford for Salah? And your answer was no. If I came to you with Rashford today and you were a Salah holder, would you take that trade?
My answer is still no. Would you do that trade?
Of course I would.
Why don't you try it?
Of course I would.
Send it to Abe. Send it to Avi. Let's see if
I'm saying I would take Rashford for Salah. If I was a Salah holder and someone came to me and offered me Rashford, I'm biting their handle for that.
Interesting. I think you're crazy. Is Rashford a midfielder or a forward on the game?
He's a midfielder, and okay. I don't think it's crazy. I think it's the most rational thing anyone could do, and it's not even remotely close to like an interesting, controversial take.
Look, my thing is you're going with someone who's having a good season for the first time in how many years? Until last we saw Rashford have a good season. Versus the most consistent Premier League player of the last 5 seasons. You know what I think before you carry on there. A lot of people forget we're halfway through the season. 19 games is a lot of football. A lot can happen.
I know, but I don't think you are removing the football context of what is going on at the moment to the draft context of like what these Oaks have done over the last few seasons. Like Liverpool are playing the worst football we've seen them play in years, and it just
that's exactly my point.
Better. You've been
this
saying
is the worst
you've been saying
that they've been playing in years. It can only get better, and Salah's still at this level. So if it gets better,
I think you lost all credibility with not taking my Marcus Rashford trade.
But let's do a nice little bet for the viewers. We'll call it points right now on who's going to finish higher. You've got a 15-point lead on Rashford.
I was even going to say to you, start it clean right now. 0-0. I'll even give you that. I'll give you that even.
No. I want the 15-point lead. I want you to have the 15-point lead.
Enjoy the United game tonight. Enjoy it.
I actually need, as long as Leeds concede, I should be fine in my draft win. So,
and that's what your last trade offer.
My last trade offer, risky, but also interesting one. Similar view to my other two on Foden and Salah is Mason Mount. You know, I think he's one of the few Chelsea players that are at risk of rotation because of the millions of signings they did, none of them were his position.
Yeah.
So, from a starting Chelsea player, you know, I think Chelsea are going to be a 10 times better team for the remainder of the season. I think there are 2 or 3 really good players that they did sign that can change that side, and I think that will benefit Mount. And again, with his poor start to the season, you should be able to get him easier than in previous time.
Yeah. Look, where I'll disagree with you is the fact that Chelsea are going to get better. I don't know if they are. I was a fan of Graham Potter getting the job. He's struggling. I'm happy to give him some time and see, you know, if he can do anything with the team, but I'm struggling to see it at the moment. A whole bunch of new players coming in doesn't necessarily settle the squad at all. But I do back Mason Mount. He's a quality player. And I think even if they don't necessarily improve, he's good enough to turn around his season at some point. And I think you are right. No one's been bought in his position. And good mentality.
In fact, they've let go players in his position. You know, letting go...
not really in his position. Jorginho. Yeah, no, that one I'll definitely agree with. And I think let's end off on that amicable note, Ange. You've just made that Rashford hat-trick tonight so much sweeter for me. Go and enjoy it. Everyone, thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. This has been the Draft Academy, and until next week, thanks a lot.